My son is a serial killer. My son James is 18. During my freshman year in high school, my girlfriend got pregnant. She bailed once he was born and I raised him alone. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment duplex. Evenings often find him with pals or outdoing me in our spirited Call of Duty face-offs. For a time, a thought played at the back of my mind: could my boy be gay? Not that it mattered, but his absence of a girl by his side was peculiar. I broached the topic. He shot me this grin: "Nah, Dad, I'm straight. Just holding out a bit longer, you know? Last thing you need is grandkids while you're still in your 30s. That was our intimacy talk. A while back, he informed me he'd be out late for a date. No need for details, I thought, slipping him a $100 bill, with the simple instruction for him to be back for lunch. James was good to his word. After that, it became somewhat of a routine. He'd give me the heads up on Friday, and come Saturday, he'd be back. As for the women he was seeing, I hadn't had the pleasure of meeting any of them, but I reckoned he liked his privacy. One evening, I found myself sitting in front of my television and figured, why not see what the news has to say? The screen shifted from some product jingle to the solemn visage of the news anchor. The news lady began, her tone grave: "There's been a disturbing development. Several women from our town are missing. Authorities are piecing together whether there's a connection." Our town was the quiet sort. The thought of my son being out and about while danger lurked scared me a bit too much. I approached him, my concerns laid bare. He waved them off, reminding me of his towering height, just a hair shy of 6'8". In the dark folds of the night, a protective streak got the best of me. Unbeknownst to James, I sneaked his phone and slipped in a tracking app, just for peace of mind. With memories of my own invulnerable teen days, this felt like the least I could do. Hidden and set, I returned the device, and my concern quickly tucked away. I figured that if I ever got worried while he was out, a quick glance at my phone would show me his whereabouts. It was a safety net. As I lounged, the unsettling case of the vanishing women, however, had me obsessively scrolling online. In a span of 10 weeks, 6 women, all different in age and looks, had disappeared. No bodies turned up. The 7th name that cropped up froze my blood. Rochelle. She'd reappeared a decade back, attempting to mother James, a role she was wholly unequipped for. A string of broken pledges and missed dates later, I had her undergo a substance test. Her failure led to the court severing her ties with James, and I thought it was best if he wasn't exposed to her decline. It was a Saturday dawn, an unease twisted in my gut. Rochelle wasn't a regular topic between James and me. After James, she plummeted into the abyss of substance abuse. Seeing her was a stark reminder of the toll substances taken. Taking a deep breath, I stood before James, breaking the news about his mother. He paused his game, met my eyes, waiting. "Rochelle's missing," I muttered. "Police say there were signs of a struggle at her trailer." He stared blankly at the screen, unpausing his game, and with a note of resignation remarked, "Well, it's not really breaking news, then is it?" James and I treaded lightly around the subject of his mother, mostly because he didn't like talking about his mother. My involvement with the legal system was, in large part, due to one distressing incident during her custodial visit. She'd taken him away to her apartment, where, unbeknownst to me, she was conducting her intimacy work business. The sobering realization that his first genuine interaction with his mother had him bearing witness to addicts lining up, cash in hand, for her services was nothing short of horrifying. The day's ordeal ended with a man James referred to as Stephen dropping him back off at our doorstep. He'd spent hours outside, shivering in the cold, jacketless. I rushed home to find him, and all he'd say was that his mother didn't want to see him anymore. I immediately enrolled James into therapy. With time, the vibrancy returned to his eyes, and the therapist's sessions grew less and less frequent. In the time since, I think he may have only brought her name up once. James informed me of another impending date the subsequent week. My unease took root that evening, compelling me to check the app. It showed him driving to a nondescript address, then to an isolated location, someplace in the middle of nowhere. The app's features had eluded my prior notice, and I was taken aback to discover that the app had tracked his every move. To my alarm, it revealed recurrent visits to that very desolate spot over the last month and a half. A chill ran down my spine when the app showed that my son went to Rochelle's trailer, the very night she went missing. Skepticism clawed at me, but my heart, blinded by parental love, refused to entertain the bleak whispers of my mind. In a swirl of denial, I threw my phone on the bed and chugged whiskey. I woke up with a heavy head the next day. I went into James' room and saw him playing Call of Duty. I took that time to entertain my curiosity, the need for clarity. I found myself behind the wheel, and drove to that isolated location where James had been taking his dates to. The GPS led my car down a gravel road, which soon went into a clearing. A pond came into view. I parked, noticing faint remnants of a recent campfire. On drawing closer, its warmth still lingered. An involuntary sigh of relief escaped my lips. Perhaps this was just a clandestine romantic spot James had chanced upon, where he'd bring his dates to. However, the tranquility of the scene was marred when my eyes landed on tracks leading to the pond, looking as if something heavy had been dragged. A growing unease settled within me as I noticed splashes of blood on the grass. I waded into the water, and about 10 feet out, my worst fears were confirmed. I stepped on something hard. Reaching down, my fingers grasped a coarse chain tethered to a sodden, blanket-wrapped form. The cloth revealed a face distorted by water and decay, unmistakably, Rochelle. Shock propelled me back to my car. I sped back home and found myself paralyzed in the driveway. My heart's frantic beats competed with the deluge of tears, and a torrent of denials and theories to somehow make James seem innocent. The dark silhouette of James obstructed my peripheral vision. He was standing near my driver's side window, nearly causing me to jump out of my skin. Hesitantly, I got out of the car and was met with James wrapping his arms around me. His embrace was firm, warm, grounding. "We'll get through this, Dad. Just tell me," he whispered. I walked in the house, and after putting on some dry clothes, I sank into an armchair across from James. The silence was loud, tension thick. Finally, as my eyes were fixed on the ground, I uttered, "I found your mother." He responded, "Oh." I looked right at him and said, "Please tell me you didn't do anything stupid, son." He looked off to the side and said, "Define stupid." I raised my voice a little. "God damn it, James, did you unalive your mother?" He laughed and said, "That bitch was dead a long time before I clocked her on the head and dragged her to my car. Any bitch that would try to sell her son for dope has been dead for a long time." I couldn't speak. I had always wondered about that night, but James never talked about it. James continued, "You know, the a-hole that gave me a ride home and told me never to go back to my mother. I guess it could have been a lot worse. But really, that was the day I snapped. I understood how meaningless life really was. Of course, I unalived her." My son began a chilling confession, admitting to having unalived 15 people. I sat there, paralyzed. Once the heavy words stopped pouring from his mouth, I was trapped in a daze. I mustered up the courage to speak. "James, we need to get you some help. This isn't a path you should tread." He was quick to interrupt, "No therapist can fix me, Dad, let's not kid ourselves. My 18th birthday is around the corner. Soon I'll be out of your life, besides, I have my own plans." I just stared at him, grappling with the enigma he'd become. By the time of his 18th birthday, I'd quit my job, spiraling into a haze of booze, numbing the pain of the revelation. True to his word, the morning after his birthday, James vanished. A sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd find redemption, was crushed when the police discovered his mother in the pond. My son was long gone.